I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: what could Star Wars learn from Mad Max Fury Road? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because I think that Mad Max Fury Road is just a phenomenal piece of filmmaking. For me, Mad Max Fury Road could be summed up in two words: choreography and canvas. Everything about this, there's just a wondrous and beautiful choreography to everything about this film. The action scenes are obviously choreographed and the way things play out in that regard on screen. The interactions between characters are obviously carefully choreographed. Basically, what you see happening on screen, the motivations, the writing of things, thought has gone into it. It's been thought through. And there's this beautiful sort of cinematic choreography about this film. It's not just stuff that's stuck on screen for the sake of it. It's not just stuff that's being done because, other films do this, so we should do this too. There is thought to this. There is planning. There is choreography. And it's canvas as well, because this is a film which really takes advantage and full use, I think, of what film actually is. It uses film as a canvas. These beautiful vistas, these beautiful use of colours and lighting and world building and characterisation. There's just so much here, and this is one of those films where a lot has happened off screen that you don't even know about, or little tiny things you wouldn't even notice. But they're all part of the sort of the world building here and the mythology and the sort of anthropology of the society that you see in this film. One of the things that you sometimes hear people saying about Mad Max Fury Road is the claim that it's light on plot, or it hasn't got much of a plot. I completely disagree with that. Instead, what I think you've got here is a film which has a very straightforward plot, and what they've done also is they haven't put a whole lot of excessive and over-bloated writing into telling the story. There's no pointless canto bite scenes here. There's no sort of self-aggrandizing and sort of pompous writing. This is not overly inflated. This is exactly what script writing should be. You only write what you need to write. You only put on screen stuff that actually advances the plot, that gives us character development, that drives the story. That's all you put on screen. You don't waste your time with other stuff. Doesn't matter how grandiose and impressive you think it is, you don't put it on screen. And this film is a great example. It just sticks to what film should be and what you need to see on screen. The problem, I think, is that we are now so used to seeing films that are over bloated and pompous in their writing and riddled with all sorts of complex but totally unnecessary things, that we now look at a film like this and we think, it's a bit simplistic, isn't it? It hasn't got a plot, because we're so numbed and dumbed down by seeing films that have got overwriting. We now think that the overwriting is what things are supposed to be. No, this actually is a very straightforward plot, but there is a plot there and it's very strong and it's very clear. Characters are also well developed in this. You get told everything you need to know about these characters, and their motivations make sense. And what's so good about this film is there's a lot of show, don't tell. You see things about these characters. There are moments of exposition, but it's not exposition heavy. Instead, it lets you, through the visuals, get a sense of who this character is, through their actions, by what they do, rather than what they tell you. You see Furiosa at one point with a missing arm. It's never really explained what the missing arm is actually all about and why that arm might be missing. But you can assume, based on everything else you see on screen in this world, why that might be that way. And it gives you a sense about who she is as a character. She's not like the others. She has a physical handicap in this world that makes her different. It's stuff that maybe you're not even noticing, but you are subconsciously aware of about a character, and it's actually showing you stuff. It's developing that character. The motivations of characters make sense. So when Immortan Joe is in this position of advantage where he can press home the advantage and destroy his enemies, and all of a sudden one of his wives, quote unquote, swings out from the vehicle and swings out on that door and makes herself a human shield, it makes perfect sense that he would stop in his actions and withdraw and not press the advantage and destroy his enemies, because in doing so, he will now endanger one of his wives who he views as a piece of his property, and he's so desperate to get back because he's desperate to have his breeding program continue to run. There's nothing pointless that you see on screen here. Now, it might feel excessive, but it's not excessive. Excessive is when you do things that don't need to be done. There's nothing excessive about this. It's big and it's grand and its scale and its vision and what it's managed to accomplish. But all of those things are there and they serve the story, they serve the plot, they serve the forward momentum of the film. And on top of all of that, as if all of that wasn't good enough already, they also make us invest in and care about characters that in many ways you would think it kind of seems strange to actually care about. Think about the character of Nux. We first meet him and he kind of looks like a demented evil mime. This is kind of what all the war boys look like. And there's sort of a frenetic craziness and absurdity to them. It's really quite a grand artistic vision when you think about it. But there is an absurdity to it. This is not a character you can look at and go, oh yeah, that's relatable to me. It just really isn't. I don't know of anyone who could find a character like that relatable. But all of a sudden, there comes a moment of tenderness and vulnerability. And by the way, it doesn't happen suddenly. There's no Mary Sues in this film. There's no stark tonal shifts that don't make any sense that come out of nowhere. It's slowly built up to. But what happens is, all of a sudden, he becomes this vulnerable character. And we see him in that scene where he is lying vulnerable in the back of that vehicle. And you realize in that moment, he's a young, sick boy. And he's been deluded by someone. He was seeking hope. He was seeking answers. He's been deluded by this vile and evil tyrant. And all of a sudden, though, you look at him and you realize his vulnerability and you see his struggle and his weakness, and you begin to actually identify with that, and you begin to start to connect with him and say, I want this guy to succeed. I want good things to happen for him. It's amazing how this film does that. There's these characters that we shouldn't really be able to connect with, we actually do begin to connect with them in a really meaningful way. And the things we don't even realize it's starting to happen, because it's such good writing. It's not like it's like, okay, right now you should connect with this character. It just slowly begins to unfold, and you are more and more and more invested in what's going on and who they are and what this journey that they're undertaking is. And here's why I think there's a lot of lessons it could actually offer to Star Wars. Because just like Star Wars The Last Jedi, this is a sci-fi action film. There's definitely fantasy elements to it. There are these quirky and strange characters who are definitely not the norm. In fact, Immortan Joe is almost kind of like a Darth Vader, Kylo Ren-esque type mask-wearing character. They are part of, Immortan Joe has this evil empire. He's part of this evil empire which is pursuing a small band of rebels. So the whole film is a chase movie, which is exactly what The Last Jedi is as well. But here's the thing. It does all of those things well. Like I said, it sticks to good, solid script writing. Show, don't tell. Put things on screen that need to be there. Don't put stuff on screen that doesn't need to be there. It's such a commitment to filmmaking that it's really something wondrous to behold. And here's the big point. It does something that The Last Jedi completely failed in. It presents what I think is a very good and healthy and real version of male-female heroism, because it's built on the idea of male-female complementarity. The Last Jedi is about female characters effectively lecturing and putting male characters in their place. It's about dominance of one gender over the other. That's not what you see in Mad Max Fury Road. Furiosa, for starters, is not a Mary Sue. She's not invincible. She's not perfect. She gets things wrong. She can't do everything by herself. Think about the plan that they actually execute, the winning plan that the whole movie culminates in, is them going back and taking back the control over Immortan Joe's kingdom. But that's not the plan that comes from Furiosa. That's Mad Max who says this is what you need to do. Furiosa is going off on this other plan, and they're biking off into the Saltlands, and he catches up with them and stops them and says, "No, what are you doing? That's not going to work. You need to go back, and you need to take the kingdom, and now's your opportunity to do that." And he's right. He's absolutely right. But it's not Furiosa who comes up with this plan. Furiosa is about to embark on a flawed plan that will get them nowhere. So Furiosa needs Mad Max. But here's the thing. Mad Max, as the male character, also needs Furiosa. And it's fascinating the way you see this unfolding, because Mad Max at the beginning is very cynical. He's very jaded. You could say he's a very broken man. And so when he first encounters Furiosa, who's actually doing this good and truly self-sacrificial thing, trying to save these women from evil, he is cynical about it. He doesn't want to get involved. And it's not that he's a bad guy, it's just that he's so cynical and jaded himself. You clearly get the sense that he doesn't buy into other people's problems because he doesn't sort of see any point. He's become so jaded and overwhelmed by the darkness around him. But as this plot progresses, all of a sudden there's a moment where, and it's beautifully symbolized too by the whole idea of Max becoming unshackled. So he goes through these various stages of being released from his chains, from his imprisonment, from hanging upside down on that Warboy vehicle, to then all of a sudden getting free of the chains of this, from the Warboys, and then finally unshackling himself from the face mask. Right? It's this whole process of unshackling that's happening, and he's finding his freedom in the process. And how does he find his freedom? When he realizes, there's a sense of realization that what Furiosa is doing is actually pure. It's good. It is truly virtuous. He shouldn't be cynical about it, because she is a good person trying to do a good thing. Just because the world is full of corrupt people, it doesn't mean that every person is corrupt. And this is sort of this realization that he's wrong to be so cynical about what she's doing and think she's got ulterior motives. She clearly doesn't. And in that moment, he joins in with her. He goes with her on this journey, and he gives himself to that. And it's that unshackling we see. And he finds his redemption. And you might not have even realized you were seeing what you were seeing. But right from the very beginning of the film, we have this whole thing that keeps repeating itself for Mad Max, where he keeps seeing the ghost of his dead wife and his child. And there's that great sense of failure that he has, and he blames himself for this. He can't protect these women. He can't keep people safe. It has destroyed him as a man. It's why he's haunted by this. So, in this moment in the film where he is able to actually save this group of women, what's happening? He's finding his redemption. It's through Furiosa that Mad Max actually finds his redemption. So Max needs Furiosa, but Furiosa also needs Max. No one's lecturing any other person. It's male-female complementarity, and the difference is clear and obvious. Furiosa is not some militant, strong woman trying to pretend she's a man. There's no denial of her feminine genius. She is a nurturer. She's trying to do what women do. They rescue vulnerable people. That's why she's doing what she's doing in this movie. And Max does what he does. He brings his masculine strength to protect those women as well. And he brings his analytical male mind, and he says, hey, here's our chance to go back, and we can go through that past. He analyzes, comes up with a solution. There's this beautiful male-female complementarity in this film. No one is being lectured. No one is being hectored in any way here. Think about the character of Nux and how he finds his redemption. What happens to him? It's through the feminine genius. He begins to experience the nurturing of this woman who actually shows him genuine love and care and compassion, and isn't just interested in using him as a utility, as a tool, as a means to an end in some war. He's not just a weapon, a human being who has been weaponized by a Morton Joe, die in Valhalla and die bravely, kill yourself for my sake. No, this person genuinely cares about him. And through that nurturing female care, which is very much the feminine genius on display. She's not some butch man who's pretending, that in a woman's clothes or in a woman's skin. This is a woman on display who's calling a man out of himself, the way it's supposed to be. And Nux is transformed by that. And then when Nux dies at the end of that film, towards the end of that film, what's happened? There's this massive shift when he says, "Witness me." It's no longer about this brutal, fundamentalist death cult. It's now about self-sacrificial love. Witness me. He's not just saying, witness my death. He's saying, witness the meaning of my life. Witness the hope in this. I am doing something truly good, and that's what you need to see. There's no Rose Tico character here saying, oh, no, we don't do that. We fight for what we love, not die for what we hate. There's none of that kind of stuff going on here. There's such a beautiful moment when he says, witness me. I've changed, I've transformed, I have become what I'm supposed to be. A man who is willing to give of himself, to give of his masculine strength, even to the point of being willing to lay down my life for the sake of others. It's a beautiful moment of heroism. And it's very much what we see underpinning this film. There is the hero's journey, that call to self-sacrificial love. And as I said, that male-female complementarity. Look, Star Wars, you could learn a lot from Mad Max Fury Road. So JJ, I don't know what you're doing right now. And whoever's going to be writing future Star Wars movies, stop what you're doing and go and watch Mad Max Fury Road. If nothing else, you will get a beautiful vision for how you can make something stand out and cinematic and that looks just glorious and something to behold, and the basics of how to tell a good story. But hopefully you'll get some of the deeper stuff that's going on there as well. One of the scenes that I really love in this film was that moment where all of a sudden Furiosa and Mad Max start working together. There's this sort of beautiful choreography to the action. It keeps switching between the two of them. He does something, she does something, he does something, she does something. And there's this choreography and everything. It's this sort of apex. What you see on screen is actually what's happening there in the lives of these characters in the moment in the story. They're now working together and we see it in their actions. And the music just complements it. There's this a really great piece of music which just sort of presents the sort of the heroism and the connectedness of the two of them and what's happening. It's just a great piece of poetic cinematography. It's just I think it's the cinema at its finest. So as I said, if you're going to be writing any future Star Wars movies and you happen to be watching this, go and watch Mad Max Fury Road and make sure you look a little bit deeper. Watch it a few times and you might discover that there's a lot of really good things you could learn about how to craft a really good science fiction action movie. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on PayPal or Patreon. There's a link for both in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.